again. Good morning. You are watching or listening to, you might be better off listening to DeProgram with Ted Rall and Jamarl Thomas. It is currently Friday, July 31st, 2026. I think the space-time continuum might be getting messed up right now. That's a whole Rumble Premium topic that we could do. Anyway, thanks for joining us. As always, really appreciate your support and just you being here. Today, lots to talk about as we head into the weekend. We've got obviously a blockbuster, possibly true, I don't know, I'm pretty skeptical, announcement that apparently peace is at hand, right? The Hamas supposedly is going to disarm, and then after they disarm entirely, then the Israelis are going to withdraw from Gaza. I don't know. I mean, I don't smoke weed, but I think someone in the White House smokes a lot of weed. I don't know what's going on. Iranian hackers are suspected of hacking into, of all things, the Minnesota water system. The dude whose kid in Georgia was responsible for a school shooting with a gun that he left in his room has just been sent to prison for 15 years. And for over almost 50,000, I bet by this point it probably is 50,000 migrants have surged into this weird little Spanish enclave called, I think I'm probably going to mispronounce this. Is it Ceuta or Ceuta? But anyway, from Morocco. It's a little bit of imperial Spain that remains in Morocco. And anyway, after the Spanish Supreme Court ruled that the Spanish can't kick out migrants summarily without due process, because Spain, unlike the United States, is a real country, these migrants from Africa or transiting via Africa surged in, and it's created a massive crisis over there. So as always, if you have questions, please like, follow, and share the show. Please, if you have questions in the live hour, which is 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern time, please pipe them in. Producer Robbie West will put them up and we'll answer them. We really appreciate your paid chats, especially, but because we need money because we live under capitalism. And I'm trying to think what else. We might even have our own coffee sponsor soon, so we'll keep you posted.
Really?
On that.
That would be great.
Yeah, Robbie, come in and talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so basically what is going on, Jeff Dornick, friend of the show, he is the CEO of Pickaxe, and I was talking about the woes that I had because of my 1775 coffee addiction, and now I can no longer get it because it's just too expensive. And so
that's a sad tale of woe.
It is. So he has a coffee he calls Supermassive Black Coffee, which I like the name. It has that really nice galactic theme to it. And he is going to send us some of that coffee, and we are going to sample it. And if we like the coffee, then he will allow us then to sell it here on the show as an affiliate.
Which would be awesome.
That is.
Yep. And of course, we all love coffee, so we're not going to recommend any shit coffees. If we find out this coffee sucks, we'll say so.
I mean,
it probably doesn't suck, but we'll see.
I've not been to bed yet. I've been coding all night.
Better living through coffee.
Yep.
You live like a 20-year-old. There's something weird about that. All right.
I'm just retarded.
That's what I just said. Okay. Anyway, so sorry, I was laughing when we first came on because we were having some strange split screen moments with Rumble Studio, but it seems to be a bang. Anyway, what do I guess we have to go into Hamas right away, right? I mean, what else are we going to do first?
Yeah, I don't doubt that Hamas may make a deal, but I don't buy the disarmament stuff. And I damn sure don't buy Israel pulling out. I mean, people need to remember this is chicken and egg stuff. This is very straightforward though in the direction of which one this is. Let's take Lebanon, for example. Lebanon existed, or let's say Hezbollah existed, in order to push out the Israelis. It wasn't like, Hezbollah just came out of nowhere and Israelis were fighting Hezbollah. It was the other way around. They were doing so as a way of pushing out the Israelis from southern Lebanon. And I guess I'm saying Hamas is something very similar. This has to do with the occupation and the response to the occupation, not the other way around. And so my point in saying that is Hamas giving up their weapons doesn't mean that Israel is going to leave, nor does it mean that Israel is going to stop the attacks. I mean, they just bombed tents at night yesterday. So I don't buy this premise that Hamas is going to make this kind of deal to disarm. Hamas knows this better than I do. They may make a deal, and they may make some kind of deal in order to try to get a better outcome for the area. But the belief that Israel is going to withdraw, I don't buy it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I also don't believe that Hamas, why? I mean, nothing that they've done so far has been really, really dumb. And and I can't think of anything really like dumber than than to unilaterally disarm while the hostile, aggressive invasion force of Israel, continues to constrain and control 70% of this already densely populated area,
Yes.
and they're running around with munitions and tanks and doing God knows what and bombing as they please. And you're going to disarm. And then once you're completely disarmed, then you're going to, and you're turning over your weapons to like Trump's board of peace, which is totally in bed with the Israelis. You're then the Israelis, out of the goodness of their cold little hearts, are going to pull out, and peace will reign, and doves will fly around. I mean, none of that's true. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, no one would agree to this. I mean, Hamas is not in as good a position as Iran is right now, to be sure. But still, I mean, it's not, I would not say that they've lost either. And, as the guns are the only thing they have going for them. I mean, this deal, a lot of things jumped out at me. It's just thinking this is ridiculous. But the stupidest thing was the cops, the Hamas police, would be giving up their sidearms. Okay, I've never heard of a transition of power where that happened. Even when there was de-Baathification under, Brenner in Iraq, they didn't strip the sidearms away from the local police as opposed to the National Army. I mean, you got to have law and order is the most important thing. Even when Biden withdrew from Kabul, Biden's troops negotiated with the Taliban to provide law and order on the streets during the U.S. withdrawal, and dealt with local Taliban police. The police are going to, if you're talking about taking away the guns from the police, I'm like, I don't know what this deal is, but it's not like a deal that could work or might work or is even real. I mean, this has got to be like bullshit, right? I mean, 99.9% chance it's got to be bullshit.
Well, it depends on. Well, I think the deal is bullshit, yes, but I think Hamas is open. I mean, because over and over again, we kept coming out with these proclamations in the West about what Hamas is deciding to do, what Iran is deciding to do, what Lebanon is deciding to do. Most of these things were never true. And even in the context of deals that might have been, quote, deals, they were never honored. Like, think of the number of deals that have been made with, quote, Hamas or with Lebanon. Have any of those deals been honored?
Yeah, and they've always been broken primarily by the Israelis.
By the Israelis, yeah. It's like, fool me once, shame on me, or shame on you.
74 times.
Yeah, fool me 74 times, shame on me. I don't buy it until it happens.
No, I mean, yeah, no, this is, I mean, of all the Trumpian announcements, like, this is a deal. And by the way, neither side has announced that this is true, right? Like,
Right.
the Israelis, neither Hamas nor the Israelis have confirmed it and said, yeah, there's a deal.
I mean, I don't doubt Hamas is willing to make a deal. They've been trying to
me
make a
too.
deal from day one. I mean, as you point out, they're in a weaker position. They're getting murdered in mass. Women and children are being slaughtered. Even if you're Hamas, that's kind of, well, it's not even if you're Hamas. Hamas is just the people who live there. I mean, that is difficult, I would imagine, to accept. Like, meaning in the West, they have this idea that people who get killed in the Middle East, but somehow it doesn't matter to the people in the Middle East. Nothing
Right.
could be more
They
insane.
don't care about their own lives because they're going to get their
what a
49
deranged,
virgins or whatever.
yeah, what a deranged point of view to have. It's like, well, they don't really care about their lives, so if we kill hundreds
That's what we
of them,
always say about our enemies, right? That's World War II. We say that about the Japanese. They don't care about their own lives.
by the way, we still say about the Russians now, and we even say it about the Chinese.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, well, yeah, they don't really care about their people. They don't care about their populations. It's like, so why would then they raise 800,000 out of poverty if they didn't necessarily care about their people. And when you talk to the public itself, the public has a large buy-in to the government because the government is effective. It's competent in a way that this government is not. Right. So it's,
And
I don't know.
all human beings are the same. I mean, we're all wired the same way. I mean, what's more basic than wanting to stay alive, right? Nothing. I
Right.
mean, all animals want to stay alive. I mean,
And
we all
watching
care
a
about
mother
that.
wail over their kids being murdered gets that across that much more so. When
Yeah.
you hear the population screaming and crying and everything else, they're doing what our parents would do if one of us were killed. So yeah, I find that stuff to be racist and hateful and deranged. But I'm very skeptical of this. Again, it's not that
Well,
Hamas is not willing to make a deal. They
I'm not
are.
hearing you.
And from my understanding, what Hamas was effectively saying was, look, if there's a leadership that's chosen, then we're willing to deal with that. But disarming, I don't know if I buy the disarmament thing. In fact, I know I don't buy it. Not just I don't think I don't buy it.
I am suddenly.
It happens.
I'm not hearing anything. So, Robbie, maybe you can pipe in here while I troubleshoot.
Oh, he can't hear me. Yeah, I believe it when it happens. I believe it when it happens. Up until this point, none of it has ever been real. I mean, even when they're talking about the stuff in Lebanon, like Israel has made a deal with Lebanon. And then when you look at the deal is like effectively southern Lebanon goes to Israel. It's like, what the hell is this? How do you think this is going to fly, right?
Well, Hamas won the war. Why would they surrender after winning?
But
That
did
doesn't
they
make.
win? Well, did they win the war? Explain what you mean by they won the war.
So,
Yeah, that's a big statement. It's not
Yeah.
Iran. Iran's clearly won the war.
Okay, so here's what I mean about Hamas won the war. So with the Abraham Accords that were going on,
Mhm.
Right.
the entire concept of a Palestinian state was abandoned, written off by the Arab world at large. Hamas then went across the border, punched Israel in the nose, knowing exactly what was going to happen. They were counting on an Israeli overreaction that would
Yeah.
then deliver worldwide sympathy to the plight of the Palestinian people, the fact that their land is being stolen, the fact that they are being genocided in a slow burn genocide for decades. Hamas did what it did. They knew they were going to be taking their licks. They knew that Israel was going to overreact, and we are where we are right now. We would not be having this conversation about a Palestinian state or about what's going on in the West Bank or what's going on in Gaza if Hamas had not done that. They won a political victory counting on the bloodthirsty nature of the Zionist regime.
All of this
Now,
is true. Every word you
That
said
is
so
a
far.
that is a political
mean-
victory.
I made this exact argument early on in the war when it first happened, and this is a very difficult argument to make. Like, it is because what the argument hedges upon is blood.
Yeah.
What we're wagering is blood.
Correct.
Meaning we are sacrificing hundreds of thousands for
Yeah.
this political outcome
Right.
that we wouldn't necessarily be able to get without the blood that's going to be shed for that political
Hamas
outcome.
has said, their leadership has said that. So I mean,
Yes.
they've been very clear about it from day
They said it
one.
openly.
And to the
That's a
point,
hell of a thing, right?
and to the point,
And that's hardcore.
if you're going to sacrifice, if 100,000 people are going to die, is there any real difference if they're starved to death slowly by sanctions and strangulation as opposed to being taken out by a 2,000-pound bomb in a market? Either way, they're going to die.
The end result
Right.
is the same.
One way gets news stories, the other way doesn't.
Hamas
Right.
needed a game changer, and they got one, and it worked in their favor.
And that's what I'm saying that
And
they
the
want.
Israelis are too fucking stupid, pig-headed, or they're lying and they know the truth, but they're pretending like they've won. And anyway, they're Hamas fucked up, and they didn't know what they were going to get. That's none of that is true. And the Israelis seem
exactly
to
what we're
think
gonna
that they think that the demise of public opinion in their favor isn't going to make any difference. That's not true either. It's just going to, it might take a little longer than I might hope, but it's going to happen. It is happening right now. We're watching it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's-
from their point of view, they're occupying 70% of Gaza, and they're going to expand further into it. They've occupied larger into the West Bank. By the way, I agree in principle with the argument that both of you are making.
I mean,
But
seriously,
from the
what-
Israeli point of view, they're occupying 70%
Militarily,
of Gaza.
Hamas is in a less clearly victorious position than
Right. They're worse off. I mean, the people
Yeah.
are huddled in tents full of rats that are full of water. Like the
And
people
Hamas
are
is hiding
horrible
in their
conditions.
tunnels.
And yeah, they're hiding in their tunnels, according to the Israelis. But you also have the situation of expanding in the West Bank and the killings that are taking place in the West Bank with the expansion in Syria, the expansion in the Lebanon, like meaning from the Israeli position. If you're looking at it, you may think to yourself, hey, we're moving on multiple fronts, but that's very fragile.
Well, so was the Battle of the Bulge at the end of World War II was the Nazis making an advance too, but it was a last final gambit, right?
Yeah,
well, at the end of the day, Hamas is banking on the Arab man on the street to finally step up and tell his government, stop being a whore,
yes,
and defend our brothers and our sisters over here. Now,
I want to make a JT argument. I mean, I think for Hamas, time is definitely on their side. Every day saps Israel's popular support around the world. They should be in no rush to make a deal.
Well, here's
Hamas.
Hamas should be in no rush to make a deal.
That Iran and the other resistance forces are going to become that much more, like meaning the fact that Iran is now hitting all of these bases in the Middle East. Okay, that's a new norm.
Egypt.
That wasn't happening before.
14 countries are currently involved in this conflict. And yeah, some of them are, the size of Manhattan, but still 14 countries.
Yeah, being dragged in. And as Robbie pointed out, and beforehand, you weren't getting any of that. I mean, you were getting the Abraham Accords, which was this kind of Jewish supremacy thing in the Middle East. Yeah. Whereas now, this is a different model.
Yeah.
Right?
And the thing is, a lot of people think about warfare in terms of who controls the ground at the end of a battle. That's not the point of a war.
No.
War is a continuation of politics by other means. It is a means to an end. And sometimes you got to pay a blood tax.
And everybody seems to think they still make the fallacy of thinking that like death counts make the difference, right? Like if we kill more of you, if that were true, man, if that were true, we'd be sitting in Vietnam right now.
Yes.
If that were true, we'd be sitting in Afghanistan and Iraq and Somalia and all these other places that kicked our asses, right?
And the Nazis would have won the war against the Soviets.
True.
That didn't, that didn't happen, right? Have any of you ever contemplated the idea that Israel did this on purpose, like in the provocation? Like meaning they knew Egyptian intelligence had given the Israeli government the idea that Hamas was going to have a raid. Mm-hmm. The Netanyahu government
knew for a year. The Mossad knew because there were social media feeds showing Hamas training for it with the paragliders and all that.
And Israelis did shit about it.
And so don't forget, it took 9.5 fucking hours for the IDF to respond to the kibbutzim, right? I mean, so if you're a Zionist and you're watching us right now, you shouldn't believe me because it's such an outlandish comment that you should go and Google it yourself and just see, is Ted Rall full of shit about this? But it's true. The New York Times reported it, 9.5 hours. Okay, I've been to Israel. You can drive the long way from one end of the country to the other in about 4 hours without driving the way I do. I mean, it's like
Israeli.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The IDF deliberately did not respond to the attack, and they had a smart fence. They knew it was breached the second it happened, right?
And attacking their own people, right?
That's true too.
Like many of the people that were attacked
Samson
were
directive
killed by the IDF, and so and they weren't the Hamas eating babies. They weren't these rapes. They were systematic and everything else. None of that stuff was true. I mean, even the New York Times at great pains reported that wasn't true. And I'm using the New York Times because
babies
the New York
in
Times,
the microwave,
babies in the microwave, all that stuff was nonsense.
Bullshit.
But the point I'm making is, you can also make the argument that the Israeli government knew and used it as a provocation to do what they wanted to do anyway. Meaning, you can make the case that Hamas did this with this kind of political thing of thinking that the revolution was going to take place, but you can also look at it from the other side.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. Yeah,
that the Israelis knew and just let it happen with the idea of this is their 9/11 moment.
Yeah, or they could cast or their Reichstag fire or whatever you want to say. Yeah,
mm-hmm. I think what it was, and I could be wrong. I really do think this is what happened, and I think there's enough evidence out there from the social media posts, a lot of the people in the Knesset, and even Netanyahu himself, the bloodthirsty prick, talking about, well, No, if the Palestinians are so miserable here in Gaza, they could always just leave and be refugees in Europe, maybe go to America,
Yep.
and then maybe they'd be able to come back at a later time. They would
No,
never be allowed to come home.
it would
They
Never.
would
never be.
never
Well,
be
we
allowed
know
to come
that
home.
because there's never been a right to return granted since
Exactly.
1948.
No, of course not.
Exactly.
And so the Palestinians, they just hunkled down, and they're like, I was born here, I will die here, I am not going to leave. And the Israelis thought they could make life so miserable that they would just rush the Egyptian border, or the Red Cross would come in, and that these 2 million people would get airlifted to Germany,
Yep.
nuts to Europe, nuts to everything else that's going on there. We want to get these people out, and the Palestinians, to their credit and to show the heroism of their people and their race, said, "Fuck you, I'm not leaving."
Wars go on a long time. They're protracted when both adversaries believe they have an advantage, and that's what's happened here. I mean, it's like Russia, Ukraine. Both sides think they have an advantage, so it's gone on a while.
But to answer
I
your
don't think-
question, but
I
to
don't
answer your
think they
question,
think both-
that's why I said that. That's why I said that Hamas won the war. Israel said Hamas must be destroyed. Hamas still exists. The Palestinian people are still there. We are still having this conversation. By
Yes.
that definition, Hamas has won the war. Israel has suffered a major defeat.
I agree with you. I mean, look, I think that because
Agreed.
I think what you have to weigh, right? The Israelis, they coveted land, and they also obviously know that they need public approval from the international community, and especially the United States, right? So their gamble was, we can do a big land grab and not hurt our international approval too much. Not so much that it's fatal. That was their mistake, I think.
You think they thought that? I mean, okay, well,
they had reason to think that.
I think I disagree with you on both points.
Go ahead.
On the first point, the wars, when both sides believe they have the advantage, not necessarily. I mean, you could have a losing side. Ukraine, I don't believe for a moment Ukraine thinks it's winning. I just think Ukraine is not.
I think they do think that they're exceeding, they're beating the point spread. They're exceeding expectations, and they have a close relationship with the Europeans and the U.S. And they're international players instead of being like a literally what does Ukraine mean in Russian? Like hinterlands? I mean,
The borderlands. Yeah,
Yeah.
borderlands.
yeah.
I mean, I think from their point of view, they think that I don't think they're in control of their own affairs. I think most countries, if they didn't have the blank check from Europe or from the United States, would have easily have gone into negotiations up to this point. Meaning, it's the blank check. It's the Germany thing again, where Germany gives oh Jesus Christ, Germany gives Austria, Hungarian Empire, basically, hey, you have a blank check from us. And I know that's very dodgy historically, but whatever. You get the blank check. And if you think of all of the wars that these countries are involved in, if America wasn't given the blank check, they wouldn't do it. Israel wouldn't behave in the way that Israel behaves if it wasn't for the United States backing it, just like Ukraine. I guess my point is, Ukraine, I don't believe for a moment that Ukraine believes it's winning the war. I think Ukraine knows that it's losing territory hand over fist as it gets to its main battle line in Kramatorsk-Slaviansk. I think they know that, which is why they're blowing up warehouses as opposed to actually trying to fight on the front lines. I don't think they think that. I think they're just not in control of their own affairs. But from the other point, in regards to Gaza, I agree with both of you that if you can't accomplish your military objectives, you lose the war. And Israel wanted to get rid of the Palestinians, and they did not. Hamas still exists.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's exactly right. So, I mean, okay, before we move on, JT, what do you think the motivation was on the part of the Donald to claim going into the weekend, big deal, best deal ever, pieces in hand, the Nobel Committee, call me, operators are standing by?
He's still trying to cast this. Look, I think Trump is drowning. I think he's a drowning man. That's what I think. I mean, from the standpoint of what he's doing internationally and from the standpoint of what that means on him domestically. And any headline that makes him look as if he's getting something accomplished, I think he's going to relish it, whether it's true or not. I mean, think of how many times he kept claiming there's a deal with the Iranians that's around the corner. And like he did it so often that even CNN was like,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it becomes ridiculous at a certain point. And I wonder how much Americans are even invested into it. Like it happens so often. Like it's like the boy who cried wolf. And at a certain point, I don't know how many times people pay attention to the fact that you're crying for wolf.
Totally. Just a little housekeeping, and then we'll move on to some comments. DMZ America podcast is at its new time Fridays today, 11 a.m. We'll be talking about a cartoonist who's suing big tech over them scraping his work in order to create memes. That'll be kind of interesting. So it's little guy versus big tech, and TMI coming up at 10. Okay, let's do some comments here.
Wait, real quick. Does that also mean stories? Like, let's say the courts agree with them and say, well, wait a minute. Big tech can't just screen grab your artwork and use that artwork for their whatever they're using it for, either for memes or for whatever else.
Yeah.
Would that also apply to articles? And would that also apply to other people's content?
I mean,
Like,
I would think...
a slippery slope.
I think it's going to be a heavy lift legally because these companies are protected by Section 230. But yeah, I mean, I think it would have massive implications if it were successful. I mean,
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So,
does it affect us? Is I guess what I'm getting to.
Probably.
Like us covering stories.
Probably.
That would suck. If CNN could turn that can't work that way though. If CNN can't turn around and say, well, we don't want you to cover the story that we just covered.
Well, you can cover the story. You just can't you have to give citations. I mean, that's standard journalistic practice, right? Yeah. I mean, we don't really do this, but for example, if you're like, oh, Ted Cruz told the Los Angeles Times, you're really supposed to say told the Los Angeles Times. But these days people just say Ted Cruz said, and it's not really a lot of basic journalistic standards have rotted away. But all right. Ryan Newton, 2888. Robbie's dying to talk about Spain, and so am I. We will get to that shortly.
Yeah, the Spain thing is interesting.
Shall we talk about Spain?
They're calling it like a false flag.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that.
So some people have made the argument, Professor Morandi made the argument that the reason that this is happening is because Spain was so against Israel, and that the Israeli government that is working in coordination with the Moroccan government effectively released all of these migrants as a way to damage Spain. Italy turns around and effectively says, we're considering changing the EU rule set associated with Spain because of the migrants, because they don't want the migrants coming into Italy. Meaning it's a mess.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Morandi is right on this.
I don't know either.
When you see a truck pull up and a boatload of people fall out the truck, and you're like, what the fuck is that? It looks so wild.
I mean, it's been, so this is there's two little walled cities, right, that are in Morocco, but still belong to Spain right along the coast. And, it's like they're touristy. They're 15th century cities. So tourists do come. And so they're in the EU, even though they're in Africa. So it's weird. But anyway, the point is that these guys are surging in. I think honestly, I don't think it's a false flag. I think that people heard about the Spanish Supreme Court decision that said, if you do this, you won't be kicked out. And this has been African migrants have tried to make it in there for years. It's not like a new phenomenon. So I think here it's just the fact that it's like, hey, let's bum rush, right? We all go at once. They can't stop us. I mean, that's not uncommon. We've seen that at the U.S.-Mexico border in Southern California.
Oh, you could stop them. Spain is a real country with a real military. Spain could stop them. It's an invasion.
Okay, I'm saying what the migrants were telling each other.
No, I understand that, but they can say whatever they want. But Spain, though, is a real country. I mean,
they could stop them. That's true.
Yeah,
I'm curious why the Spanish military didn't get involved. I mean, even if you have a court decision, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can have people just roll up in trucks and bail into the country. That was like watching that is wild. I don't know if people have seen the videos, but the videos of people streaming out of trucks into Spain is just wild to watch.
This was obviously a coordinated effort.
It seemed like it was intentional.
And of course, obviously, I wonder about the Moroccan government. I mean, the Kingdom of Morocco isn't exactly a bastion of liberal democracy, right? So, I mean, it's like they have controls. I've been to Morocco. They let it happen.
That's the point. They let it happen.
Yeah.
They seem to be involved in making it happen, not just let it happen.
Yeah, well, Mexico does the same thing here. I know Mexico will let migrants, from the southern border trains and just give them free transport up to Texas. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same playbook. It happens. And to the point about Professor Morandi, I mean, Israel has used mass migration as a weapon before. It's in their interest to do so. The more people they can push out, that they can push to the west, because a lot of Israelis look at Europe and the United States extension as an expansion of Rome. Like they actually, look at us as actual enemies in the Talmud. And so, how do you break the power of Rome? Well, how did it happen before? Migration.
I mean, look, and the Egyptians know what the Israelis, to your point, are up to, which is why they built those giant berms to try to keep the. I mean, I love the talking point, by the way, by Zionists online, where they say, "Oh, if the Egyptians care so much about their Palestinian brethren, why do they build that big fortification?" It's like because they're trying not to enable Israel's genocide, which part of the genocide's not just about killing people; it's about removing them from their homeland.
Right.
So,
Which is what they wanted, which was the policy. I mean, if you remember, Joe Biden was back in this policy. If you remember, Donald Trump and Joe Biden had ultimately the same policy of basically getting rid of Palestinians out of the territory. The Biden administration was every bit as much in on that particular policy, even though they were more quiet about it, as the Trump administration was, which is, again, it's a genocidal policy that the U.S. was effectively backing. Hey, we need to get rid of these Palestinians. Maybe we can send them to Egypt. Maybe we can send them, it was Egypt and Jordan that they wanted to send them to. Well, the majority of Jordanians are already Palestinian.
Right.
So it's like, how many more are you trying to evacuate from their lands? Like, it's just wild. And we were fully on board for that genocidal policy.
Yeah. And the thing is that Spain economically is weak. It's fragile. There's no way that economically they could handle this. It would be like if we rounded up every migrant in California and dumped them in New York City. So here you go, Mayor Mondani, you're a sanctuary city. Enjoy.
To be fair, I don't know.
It would shatter the city.
Well, the city still is not recovering from the bullshit that the governors of Florida and Texas did.
No, I get, but I mean, that's what Morocco allowed to happen to Spain. And I agree with Professor Morandi. Listen, if your enemy tells you what they're going to do, and I use the term deliberately enemy when I speak to Israel, because Israel is an enemy of the United States.
Yes, they are.
I agree with that.
Then if they tell you what they're going to do, and if they tell you that they hate you, believe them. I mean, Turkey doesn't.
They always want to do the same shit that they've done in the past. So, I mean, they don't have a lot of new ideas.
And by the way, Turkey is threatening to do that to Europe.
The Greeks,
you remember, right?
Well, the Greeks
were like, "Hey, we can." And if I'm not mistaken, Europe paid Turkey to keep many of the migrants from Syria in Turkey.
Yeah, they still pay them. And the Greeks, I mean, they keep on accidentally running over migrant boats in the Aegean, and I don't know how many people they kill. It's
thousands.
There comes a point where migration isn't just because Jose wants to go get a better life and get a job as a carpenter somewhere. A lot of times countries use migration as a weapon. And that's what's going on here. I 100% agree with Professor Morandi. He is onto it, and Europe needs to wake the hell up.
Here's the thing, though. I remember when I was in Europe, and I kept thinking to myself, these people are idiots. Like when you're talking to, let's say, the electorate, and you're talking to liberals in Europe sound very similar to liberals in the United States when they're talking about right-wingers. Oh, they're racist, and they're this, and they're that. And when you kind of point out, okay, well, do you accept the basic premise of the argument about immigration being overbearing in Europe, which it is. Europe is not America. Like, meaning it's, when you're looking at certain crimes and certain things like that in various particular parts of Europe, and you're looking at the migrant population, there is a correlation between those things. This is not, obviously I'm not anti-immigration. And so when I'm saying this because it's true. At the very least, from my understanding, it's true.
But the truth is hateful, JT. That's the problem. You're not allowed to say that because that makes you a white supremacist and a Nazi and a xenophobe.
Yeah, but I'm not. I mean, from my point of view, countries have a certain amount of immigrants that they can take in that balances the country out. Meaning, if you're talking about like Denmark, okay, Denmark is a tiny country. Denmark is going to have a limit on the number of people that they can bring into the country without creating problems in the country itself. And those problems, some of those things are just basically poverty of the migrants. Right. Meaning, if you don't have the capability for them to get jobs, education, to be reared into the culture itself, then you have people who you've brought in who are not able to integrate into the country. And you've created this kind of weird poverty thing in the country that didn't exist prior, not to mention the cultural and racial differences. Meaning it matters. There are limits to the number of people that countries can take in. At least that's my take on it, right?
Mhm.
Liberals in Europe sometimes ignore that. And they would say, well, they're just racist. They're just sexist. They're just this. They're just that.
Yeah.
And then you point out, well, how do you feel about the fact that many of these people are coming from Syria, a country that the United States effectively destroyed, and that they're coming into your country because the U.S. destroyed the country? And they'd be like, what are you talking about? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, what do you mean? What do I mean?
Well, they don't know about Honduras either. I mean,
But it's just, wow. How do you completely ignore U.S. policy that has created this issue in your countries that didn't exist prior to the U.S. effectively destroying Syria? And they don't, at least in my experience, didn't make the connection between those two things.
no, they don't.
Yeah, I agree. And Israel's doing it with the assistance of the United States and the American taxpayer. We are directly responsible for this. Just like the United States government is responsible for destabilizing Central America and South America. That's why I'm America first. Get the hell out. Trade with everybody and stop dropping bombs.
Yes.
If you want to fix immigration, that's how you do it. You stop tearing up the rest of the freaking globe.
The Spanish military, by the way, it has deployed, and they're using tear gas, riot cannons, water cannons. They've been using live ammunition. 34 people have drowned or otherwise died at least, and they say that they've kicked 25,000 people out, and they've
25,000 people.
Yeah. So this is
over the course of like a couple of days.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's crazy.
Wow.
We have a lot to talk about, so let's do more comments. Okay. Manchild says, I'm a coffee snob. I don't trust internet coffee. but would you trust us? We're internet dudes, and we would be drinking real coffee. Look, I'm a coffee snob. I order my coffee by mail because I don't like the coffee I can get locally. Okay, I'm on a subscription basis, so I assure you, I'm not going to drink any or recommend any shitty coffee. I couldn't live with myself.
Coffee snobs of the world unite.
I'm jealous of people who can sell anything, like sell kebabs to the Greeks, but I'm not one of them.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, John D. Cockefeller. I'm currently cancer maxing with some Starbucks as we speak. I intend to be more coffee than man by midday. All right. Well, that's how science progresses.
Coffee man.
Kilroy for President 2028 saw a propaganda video blaming China for the water hack. Demonization of Asians worries me for my partner and future children. I can say many of them are first-generation immigrants and love the U.S.
Yeah, that's always, the China thing sucked. Like, because if you notice, I remember, I think it was like a couple of years ago where they were doing polls on China and the American perspective of it. And you could see it get worse and worse and worse over time as the language hardened in the United States against China. The China virus. China is doing this. China is doing that. They're taking our jobs. They're taking our cash. They're stealing our technologies. Mm-hmm. Like, meaning that stuff affects how the American population sees us, not to mention when you add in media who amplifies whatever's coming out of the White House or whatever's coming out of from the standpoint of policy. I mean, even if they don't like the White House, they still have American policy that the U.S. media amplifies. And it's usually demonization of anybody that we don't particularly like, whether it's China, Russia, Iran, etc. Mm-hmm. No, it's wild. It sucks.
Remember in New York City, like when Trump was at peak China virus, homeless people got it into their deranged little heads that they needed to push Asian ladies off subway platforms. And there was a whole spate of that, right?
It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And there's something inherently wrong if your country feels it needs to do that.
Totally. Well, let's talk a little bit about Minnesota since that is the subject here. So basically, there's been some cyber attacks allegedly against at least 30 local municipalities and their water systems. They didn't really do anything to hurt them. They certainly didn't hurt the water. It looks like it was hackers poking around and looking for things, exploring, maybe, checking for vulnerabilities, like one of these, like, hey, let's take a look. And then maybe later, just in case of emergency, if there were a bigger conflict, we could exercise this option. Yeah. The fact that they said it to Iran, it's like, and the basis for this was they said that Iranians had expressed interest in hacking U.S. infrastructure. I mean, obviously the U.S. has been hacking Iranian infrastructure for years. And Iran they are pretty good at this. So I guess, but it really reminded me of the Sony hacking thing with, after that stupid Seth Rogen movie, The Interview, and
Yep.
and North Korea was accused
Right.
of, and then like later it was like, I don't think there's really we don't really know who did that, right? Might have been North Korea, could have been anybody, and like it's hard to tell. I mean, a lot of times when you hack in somewhere, you use bits of code that you pick up from other places in order to try to, make it look like someone else did it, right? To try
Right.
to throw them off the trail. And the truth is, it's all digits, right? It's fungible. Everything is just typed. So everything can be cut and pasted and erased, right? It's like, there's nothing, it's not like examining a piece of paper or, examining a piece of like, videotape, physical videotape. You don't have physical evidence that you can look at. So cyber, I guess what's the word I'm looking? Cyber forensics are just not that reliable. This
True.
is a lot of pulling shit out of your ass.
It is. No, it really is. I mean, think back to the thing that got Julian Assange on the hook more than anything else was when he released the CIA hacking. I think it was the CIA hacking tapes or hacking files. But basically, it was talking about how the CIA can go into systems and leave digital footprints of other people. So
Mhm.
imagine like
Of
having
course.
hacking tools where you go in and you leave footprints or fingerprints as if it was the Russians. And you
Mhm.
would say, well, that's a Russian hacking technique. Okay. It's a
Maybe.
technique.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe, right? It's like you've copied something else that somebody else did in order to point the finger at them. And you can do that, right? And basically, these are tools that they have in their toolkits. Okay, well, if the CIA has it, then you can imagine other countries have it. So who the hell knows who was responsible for it? You can say it was the Iranians because you're at war with Iran, but it doesn't have to be. And it doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be a state actor. If I'm a hacker, I may not like the fact that you're attacking another country, in which case I may screw with you because of your doing so. Meaning you may be creating anger in a way that non-state actors are getting involved in going after your systems. Okay, there's no way for me to entirely blame Iran for it. But even if they are, they're doing so for reasons. Right? It's
Yeah.
not like they're doing it for no reason if that's true. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, just like the Egypt thing, where they were like, well, this fits within the places that Iran said they made attack for because of the boat that Ukraine hit. Okay, I don't know that. And up to this point,
Right.
Iran has said they didn't do it. And considering they've been blowing the shit out of all sorts of things in 7 or 8 countries, and they've been taking credit for each and every country that they've attacked, it's a little bit weird that they wouldn't take credit for hitting Egypt if indeed they hit Egypt.
Or
I'm
it's
saying,
like the notorious first Trump administration memo letter signed by the 49 generals that said, this has the hallmarks of Russian
yes,
disinformation.
yes,
Which again, okay, those are words, but they don't mean anything. Like
right.
at all. It's like, do you have evidence? Much less proof. Proof would be great, but evidence? Do you have
By the
evidence?
way, when you confronted them, they were like, well, we didn't mean it like that.
Right.
You remember that when they were confronted? They were like, yeah, we didn't mean it like that.
Yeah, because they buried some weasel language deep into the thing so that they'd be able to have plausible deniability. Not too plausible is the problem.
Yep. By the way, Abdul Said, there's an Emerson poll that has him in the lead of what's her name of the Democratic.
Oh, so that's new.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Green
Let's
wall.
look up. So this is the Michigan race, of course.
Yeah.
Between.
I'm sorry to switch. I just wanted to get it while it was in my
It's
mind.
good to know. Like whatever we talk about it. We talk about anything we want here. Okay, so I see the Emerson poll. Oh wow, yeah. No, this is dramatic. So
They got about like 15 points.
Yeah, so they do currently now in the Real Clear Politics average of that's been updated since with some polls that go back to the middle of this month, mainly from about the 14th to the 29th of July. I mean, that's just 2 days ago. Saeed's like up 13, 16, 10, 15, 14 for an average of 10.2. Stevens was ahead as of, earlier in the month by 7.
I wonder if it was the debate.
I'm going to break some brains.
Well, she looked so fucking stupid. It was unbelievable.
If I've lived in Michigan as right wing and Christian as I am, I would still vote. I would vote for Saeed.
Well, you'd
I
have to
would
go
vote for
register
him.
as a Democrat.
I don't care. I would do it. Listen, I'm politically homeless. I don't care. I'm not married to the Republican Party. They don't want me. They've made that very clear. So I will vote for the candidate. The party be damned.
I wouldn't be surprised also if the big DNC, the DNC is about as, popular as herpes. And, them coming in with, fucking Clyburn and all the usual corporatists to try to affect the results. And the APAC thing between 30 and $60 million coming in from APAC for Haley Stevens, and she having no policies whatsoever. Literally she's running kind of on a record, and
this might be the Mamdani effect again. Like where the fact that they're putting so much money behind the other candidate is the thing that on some level, well, as you pointed out, she looked dumb as a box of rocks in the debate. So there's that. But as you point out,
he's not dumb as a box of rocks.
He's not. I mean, and do you think this is a change, I guess? Meaning, for one, if he wins, the loss for AIPAC would be breathtaking. I mean, even for the party, it would be breathtaking if you win.
My advice to AIPAC is, you guys, your money's not doing any good anymore. It might be doing more harm than good. You might want to keep your checkbook dry.
Yep. Yeah. Or they're going to start putting it under some other moniker where it's not AIPAC. Kind of like Blackwater changes their name to something else in order to make it seem different than what it is. But no, that the level of loss would be dramatic if he wins this.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, is it a change? Meaning, are we looking at the Sanders revolution taking place?
Yeah, it's a fucking change. And here's why. Because up until now, they've been able to say, well, okay, so a democratic socialist, not that Saeed is a democratic socialist, but he might as well be, right? I mean, his politics there's not a lot of daylight there. But, you can do that in New York City. But come on, in Michigan, like, where real people, real Americans live, flyover country, like USA. You can't do that, especially when we have this nice, golly gee, like, local yokel, like, lady who helped save the auto industry. You're not going to have some fucking Arab come out here and and start flying hammers and sickles all over the place with Islamo-socialism. I mean, and then it's like, oh shit, like not only
socialist won, right?
Yeah, and wipe the floor with her, right? And so then the next question is, I mean, it does look like he's going to win, and I guess the next question is, does he prevail in the general? If he prevails in the general and it's decisive, which is to say, if it's more than 3 or 4 points, that's a game changer. I mean, even just like for the civil war within the Democratic Party, this is going to embolden the left. It's going to be like, look, there's a model here, and also it's the support of the establishment is a poison pill. It's literally like, we all hate the DNC. We hate the corporatists. We hate, and we don't like the, and we will vote for someone we weren't sure about because we hate you so much. That's the Mamdani
That's how
thing.
Trump got elected.
Yeah.
If you think about it, that's how Trump got elected. The center failed. The wings started getting weight. You get Trump and you get Sanders on the other wing, meaning the public was fundamentally looking for something different on both sides. And the more honest race would have been Trump versus Sanders.
Absolutely. It would have provided a real alternative. I mean,
it was a real test.
Once you had Trump versus a corporatist, I mean, of course Trump was going to win.
Trump was going to win.
I mean, look, honestly, Joe Biden did not win in 2020. Donald Trump lost in 2020. He threw that election away by acting like a fucking madman in the middle of an international health crisis. And I never understood the way he behaved. Operation Warp Speed was his thing. I've always said that President Hillary Clinton would have never done that, never moved as quickly, would have been like, well, we're not going to have a vaccine for 5 years or more. So, hope everything works out. That would have been her cautious approach. He gambled, it paid off, and then he ran away from it. If he hadn't done that, he would have been reelected. So the whole thing is, it's kind of like, I mean, Democrats should not have patted themselves on the back over 2020. They didn't, they fucked up. And then look at what happened. Ultimately, they paid a ruinous price in 2024. We got a really generous donation, Jamarl, from Waterways. Thank you so much for $50.
Wow.
Great way to end the week. Thank you, DeProgram, for another great month of shows. Have a great weekend, everyone. You too, Waterways.
For that.
And John D. Cockefeller, thanks for the $5. Always a supporter of the show. If there's a mechanism by which we can actually suggest guests for DeProgram and TMI, I'd love to see Cory Doctorow with the Fellers. Yeah, I mean, I kind of know him. His piece on use of AI to minimum maximum wage discrimination is very interesting. Robbie, I think I have
Cory
Cory's.
Doctorow?
Yeah, I think I have Cory's number.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we do, but to answer this question, I have set up a new email address, and it's just for this, just so that way stuff doesn't get lost, just all the messages that I get. Huh?
You don't want to do this one?
Yeah, if we do that one.
Okay.
You said Cory Doctorow has a piece on, what would you call it? AI? It sounded interesting. That's what I'm asking you. You said AI.
It's AI to minimum and maximum wage discrimination.
No, what is that one on?
To minimize, and I don't even know what that means, but yeah.
Fair enough.
Anyway, if you want to drop a line to the show, deprogrampodcast@gmail is the place to do that. But we will set up an inbox that Robbie will monitor, because I have to admit, I never go look at the Gmail, and then I'm like, oh shit, I should have looked at that. So,
well, it's just there's just a ton of stuff. So if someone needs to get help this quick, Robbie at westglaciermedia.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be the best way, because it's only for people here on the show, like period. So if y'all need me, that's the best way to get it. And yeah, because we are looking for guests, looking for ways to just kind of just get more people on here, and it'll be more entertaining, more fun, hopefully more educational in a good way. Education, not indoctrination.
Education sounds so fun. No, actually it is. PW Walker, thanks for the $1. We didn't pull out of Lebanon for Trump. You think we'll pull out of Gaza for Amalek? BB.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
All right. So
I mean, they didn't pull out. I mean, they're still in Lebanon. In fact, they're trying to go in further. They've been blowing up communities like as recent as yesterday.
Oh, so here Vincent brings up an interesting point. He says Abdul is not a solution, though. Abdul is the progressive candidate in Michigan for the Senate race. Another sheepdog into the corporate colonialist party. 2028 should be third parties, because both have shown absolute hatred toward the people. Look, I agree. I don't think the Democratic Party is redeemable, and I don't think the left should have anything to do with it. But is this a meaningful moment? Yeah, because it's what it reflects. It reflects popular dissatisfaction among mainstream Midwestern American voters with the corporate, pseudo left. So, yeah, I mean, I think it matters.
Yeah, I think it matters too. I think people are looking for a solution, meaning it's indicative of something. It's not the typical corporatist that is usually having the entire machinery behind him with the money and everything else. If Saeed wins, that process has failed. Like, these guys have drunk, $30, $40 million into a race, into a primary, no less, in order to stop the guy. Okay, what does it mean if all of that money effectively fails to do what they want that money to do? Not to mention using the fact that he's Muslim against them. Like, all of this stuff is effectively that he's a socialist. They're hitting him with pretty much anything in the kitchen sink. Even when he's going on TV and asking him, like, should Israel have a right to exist? Like, they're asking him questions like that, right? Like, they're hitting him in a particular way.
Right.
If all of it fails, what does it mean? Especially in the context of the races that took place, like in New York, with Mamdani and some of the other people who are running for Congress. I don't know. I think it means something. Whether it's not a revolution, but it means something.
It's not a revolution. Yeah, and not to mention it's coming up on a string of corporatist failures within the Democratic Party. I mean, the Democratic Party has no money, right? The DNC's in $2 million in debt. Trump has $500 million in cash. I mean, come on. It shows the unhappiness within the party. Ken Martin's on the way out. He's supposed to be DNC chair for another 3 years, but he doesn't think he'll make it. Nobody else thinks he'll make it. Okay, so let's see. There was one other thing that we needed to discuss, of course. Oh yeah. So there's this school shooting in Georgia a couple years ago. A kid named Colt Gray, that was his name, went to basically took an AR-15 that his dad had left in his room, and went to school and shot and killed a bunch of his students. So there was a kind of a landmark case. The dad, who by all accounts was a worthless, drunken, drug-addled piece of shit and a terrible parent, alongside the terrible mom, basically was found guilty of second-degree murder, for his basically for knowing that his kid was suffering from psychological problems, was obsessed with school shooting, and nevertheless leaving a gun easily accessible to him, which was then used to kill all these people. I mean, look, I get the theory of the case. I mean, shitty parent allowed this to happen. It reminds me a little bit of Newtown, right? The Sandy Hook shootings, where the stupid fucking mom also gave like guns to her crazy, insane, like knowingly crazy, son to go and kill a bunch of little kids. And so obviously if you're a parent of one of these kids, one of the victims, obviously you want everyone who's responsible directly or indirectly to be held accountable. I get it. On the other hand, there's something about this that makes me uncomfortable, which is, to what should negligence, even negligence that has incredibly the worst possible consequences, should it land you in prison for 15 fucking years of your life? I mean, I guess I don't know.
I'm going to say yes. I mean, it depends on. It's gross negligence.
It sure is.
I mean, you're leaving. Yes. I remember when this case first took place, and I feel some kind of way about it also, because as bad as the parents were, the parents didn't have in their mind that the kid was going to take a gun and go murder a lot of people.
No.
By the same token, the kid did go and murder a bunch of people based upon the parents' actions. I don't know. This one is difficult for me. I mean, the catch becomes, how gross does negligence have to be for somebody to be put in prison for a very long time? Yeah. And is it foreseeable from the parents' point of view that the kid was going to take the gun and go and kill people? And does it matter that it was foreseeable? Meaning, is it just that the parents left their gun with the kid and that kid ended up creating a whole thing? And so the chain of events was the parents should have been more careful with their gun. Is it that? Meaning, let's say the parents threw the gun outside in a dumpster and somebody picked up the gun and go kill somebody. Okay, would they be negligent?
That's like the Hunter Biden thing where he threw his gun away in the dumpster.
Yes. Now, if somebody, as opposed to the bodyguard or Joe Biden getting that gun, if somebody else got that gun, killed a bunch of people, and they attribute it to the fact that Hunter Biden threw it in a dumpster, should Hunter Biden be negligible for gross negligence, homicide? That's tough. I mean, I agree with you. That's tough. That's a tough
It's
one.
not open and shut, right? I mean, I guess I don't really have a problem with the theory of negligence in general. I think that, like, if you leave something as dangerous as a firearm lying around where it's not supposed to be, where any asshole can get to it, and you happen to live with a kid who is deranged, then probably, obviously there's a credible case to be made for negligence here. So
let's say it was,
but 15 years is a long time. There are people who've raped people and didn't go to prison for that long.
Yeah, but the issue is death.
As the gun owner on the show, I have no problem with what happened to the dad.
By the way, I own guns myself. I used to own a shotgun. I used to go out shooting all the time. I enjoy it.
I don't have a gun safe. My rifles are literally right here in my closet. They've never been locked up. I taught my son how to shoot on an AK-47. Best platform in the world to teach someone how to shoot on, because it's idiot proof.
Now, great for the moment that your kid comes in, takes that gun, and goes out and shoots somebody. Are you culpable for what the kid did because the guns were accessible?
If my son was nuts and I knew that he was nuts and I was not locking that gun up, 100%. Now, if my son just comes home, gets the gun, up to this point, he's been a perfectly rational, highly functioning human being, no. because
That's
that's a different thing. If there's a pattern that my son is a psychopath, then it is my responsibility to have a gun safe. That
Yep.
being said, the idea of gun control here in my house is common sense. Like when I taught my son and daughter how to shoot, I'm about to go because TMI is coming up. The very first thing that I did, I took them out to the backyard. I got a watermelon and I shot it, and it exploded. I said, you need to understand the power these things have. If you shoot your brother, your sister, or somebody else, that's what happens. You can't fix it. And that imprinted on their minds. That is a very visceral image. It starts up here.
What if the parents left the gun out and a baby shot itself or shot another family member? Then what? Like, would the parents be culpable?
100%, because that's negligence at the highest level. Like if I leave my Jericho 941 on the end table, and a toddler comes in and shoots himself or somebody else, 100%, because that gun is on me.
But that's my point about the gross negligence thing. Like, aren't those things the same? Like, meaning whether the kid goes and shoots a bunch of other people, whether the kid shoots himself, and should the parents be held responsible for it? I mean, the gross negligence thing feels like it's on some level necessary. The other who kids were shot are going to be out for blood, and there have to be a consequence for it? And does a consequence land with the parent or with the kid?
Guys, we're over.
Tell you what, invite me on your show later on, and we'll talk about this.
Okay, we will talk about this later. Thanks everyone for tuning in. TMI coming up right now. Tune in 59 minutes for Scott Stantis and I. On DMZ America podcast. Have a great weekend. See you later, JT. See you soon, Robbie. Bye.